Možemo li da počnemo? Uvažene kolege, vidim da ste došli u velikom broju. Hvala vam na interesovanju koje pokazujete za ovu temu i za rad Nezavisne međunarodne komisije za istraživanje stradanja svih naroda u srebreničkoj regiji u periodu od 1992. do 1995. godine, koja je osnovana zaključkom Narodne skupštine Republike Srpske 14. avgusta 2018. godine, a imenovana rešenjem Vlade Republike Srpske 7. februara 1919. godine. Pred vama su članovi komisije na čelu sa njenim predsednikom, gospodinom Gideonom Grajfom, potpredsednikom komisije Juki Osaka i članovima komisije gospođom Marijom Đurić, gospodinom Stevenom Mejerom, gospodinom Aden Rele Šinabom i gospodinom Valterom Manošekom i gospodinom Markusom Goldbachom. Vidite njihova imena. Po dogovoru obratit će vam se, to jest izneće svoje viđenje rada komisije, njenog izveštaja, a verovatno i rezultata razgovora sa članovima akademske zajednice koja je u ovoj istom prostoru trajala do pre 20 minuta. Znači, obratit će vam se predsednik komisije, gospodin Gideon Grajf. Gospodine Grajf, izvolite. Usput samo da kažem, nadam se da ste svi dobili skraćene biografije članova komisije, tako da nema potrebe da se uz njihova imena nešto posebno na ovaj način dodaje. Gospodine Grajf, izvolite, imate reč.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. During more than 2 years, an independent, free and autonomic commission made utmost efforts to discover the authentic facts behind the tragic events that happened in Srebrenica in the mid-90s. The commission was built with 10 experts, worldwide personalities, professional experts. Each of them a famous expert in his field of expertise, each an experienced scholar, dignified, authoritative, serious, professional, distinguished scholar. What I would like to emphasize is the fact that we were totally independent. Nobody tried to intervene, to put any pressure, to dictate anything to us. We were fully independent. I'm proud to be chairman of such a qualified, talented, gifted and professional commission. The report we have written and which you have certainly read already is holding more than 1,000 pages. I would like again to emphasize the fact that the government of Republika Srpska gave us full freedom, full authority and promised us that it will fully accept any consequence, any result of our report. By this, the Republika Srpska government took a great risk, but it was decided that way and the government kept its word. The report reflects the findings of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the suffering of all peoples in Srebrenica region between 1992 and 1995, whose work was authorized by the Republika Srpska with the mandate of addressing critical issues in connection with the popular perceptions surrounding the Srebrenica region during the years 1992 and 1995, war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The multidisciplinary composition of the Commission, you can see here most of the members, resulted in different approaches and research methodologies. In addition to published sources and reference works, documents presented before the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia during various courts proceedings were also largely used by our members. During the reconstruction of the events related to Srebrenica region between 1992 and 1995, primary sources were used to the greatest available extent, while secondary sources were used only in those cases when there were no primary sources available. The Commission's media content analysis was performed in accordance with international scientific standards and was organized as a quantitative analysis dealing with the time frame from 1991 to 1995, that is the period before the start of hostilities in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the period of the war. The media content analysis team analyzed 10,000 pages of two mainstream newspapers, the New York Times and The Guardian. The finding testifies to a more or less one-sided interpretation of the war events portrayed in those influential Western media. Furthermore, the President of the Commission, that's myself, in order to investigate the suffering of all peoples during the specific period as objectively as possible, gave instructions to send certain institutions at the level of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Federation official requests for access to information relevant to the Commission's research. As evidence in the report itself, in the appendixes, the Commission has never received official responses to the majority of the mentioned requests, and in those cases, when responses did in fact arrive, we were instructed to contact other institutions, namely those responses have never arrived. After a thorough investigation by the Independent International Commission of Inquiry of Suffering of Serbs in the Srebrenica region between 1992 and 1995, it is concluded that neither an individual crime of genocide nor genocide in general took place in Srebrenica. Although the Commission does not consider the killings around Srebrenica genocide, it recognizes the fact that thousands of people, mostly prisoners of war, were killed in the most horrific way, and that those responsible for these heinous crimes should be punished. The findings of the Tribunal on Genocide will not stand the test of time because the Commission is convinced that the crimes in Srebrenica cannot be considered genocide under Article 6a of the Rome Statute, combined with the reasoning that such conduct must take place in the context of similar behaviors aimed against the group, or that such behavior in itself could have caused such destruction. In a broader sense, it is crucial for the prevention of future genocides that the notion of genocide as a crime above all crimes must not be diluted. If the term is used so lightly, as in the case of the events in Srebrenica in July 1995, it would eventually become meaningless. If such a legal understanding is realized in the future, allegations of genocide will regularly follow any army and become common to all conflicts. Most importantly, such allegations would carry very little consequences. The final report of the Commission should help in facing the past, lead to a strengthening of trust and tolerance among the peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and assist with the final reconciliation and coexistence of all present and future generations. The Commission did not aim to marginalize or diminish the suffering of any peoples. Quite the contrary. Its members expressed their deepest respect and sympathy for all the victims from all cultural and ethnic backgrounds who tragically lost their lives in the devastation during the civil war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Commission sought to attain the truth through the objective examination of the facts in connection with the occurrences from the armed conflict in this area and the application of a non-selective restorative justice process, believing that only in this way could human suffering be placed in context and eventually lead to reconciliation and dialogue. And I would like to emphasize those two terms again, reconciliation and dialogue. The Commission hopes that after this report, concrete steps will be taken towards facing the past of all, both the parties that were in conflict and the representatives of the international community, international organizations and associations of war victims. One such step could be to pay tribute to the victims of all parties at the sites of their suffering by representatives of all above parties. True and non-discriminatory respect for all innocent victims by the joint delegations of the above parties is a step that can contribute to a common confrontation with the past and a better understanding of the universal truth above the dignity and value of every human life. The Commission further recommends initiating an open dialogue between victims from all warring sides and even perpetrators where possible in the region of Srebrenica and the whole of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
Hvala gospodinu Grajfu. Dragi kolege, imate priliku da postavite pitanja gospodinu Grajfu i svim članovima komisije. Jedino molba, predstavite se, recite za koju redakciju radite, a imate na raspolaganju bežični mikrofon. Evo, izvolite.
Dušan Hadži-Nikolić, Euronews Serbia. For you, Mr. Greif, if the findings of the Commission says that there was no genocide in Srebrenica, and we can see that the War Crimes Tribunal recognize that event as a genocide, and it's widely accepted in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the main parts of the world community, how should now Serbia position itself regarding that, regarding the results of your commission when you say that there was no genocide and the International Tribunal says it was a genocide?
We all, as a Commission, stand behind every letter in this report. We worked very hard for 2 years when our sole goal, when our only goal was the truth. And we are confident that the results of our report reflect reality, reflect the events, and my hope is that with the time, maybe not immediately, other institutions around the world, other scholars, other international organizations will change their mind or adapt their conclusions to ours, because I'm certain that we did a very thorough work, and we are confident that our report, which, as I mentioned, holds more than 1,000 pages, reflects what really happened in this region without prejudices, without legends, without exaggerations. We stand behind it fully.
Dejan Kožul, Federalna televizija iz Sarajeva. Svjetski jevrejski kongres je odbacio ovaj vaš izveštaj. Možete li da prokomentarišete to? I druga stvar, na koji način mislite ovaj izveštaj kao istinu da predstavite ostatku svijeta ukoliko se zna da su presude što Međunarodnog suda pravde, a i samog suda u Hagu donešene, a one se tiču samoga genocida? I don't know, did you hear my question?
No. No.
Should I repeat it?
Yes, please. No, there is no translation.
Maybe I can speak on English if it's easier for you.
Is the question for me or
Yeah, for you, or maybe somebody else can answer also. I'm on your left side. Yeah. So the World Jew Congress, or I don't know, is it the name on English? I didn't prepare. Said that your I didn't prepare on English at all. Your report is false, something like that. Can you comment this thing? And also, the second question is, how do you see the possibility to reveal your truth about what happened in Srebrenica to the worldwide? You know, if we have decision of International Court in Hague when it says that what happened in Srebrenica was genocide. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I can respond to this question. We, as you may be able to imagine, we were aware that there have been verdicts from the ICTY about the question of genocide, and we did not lightly decide when we weighed the arguments for and against the question of genocide, that we said we do not believe that the events that took place in Srebrenica do really constitute a genocide. And we asked ourselves, when you just look at the sheer numbers of victims who were killed at this event, and you compare it to genocides, known genocides that happened before. Rwanda happened shortly before, with about 800,000 people murdered. The Holocaust happened with many millions murdered. And when you ask yourself, can you compare these crimes, then obviously there is a huge comparison in numbers. And we investigated the special intent that was needed from those who were held responsible as individuals in trials against individuals. What the outcome of the trials would we find in the verdicts, proof of their intention, of the special intention to commit genocide, or has there been other explanations? And you can see in our report that we named some explanations that has not been taken into consideration by the international, by the anti-CY. And that is one part that makes us believe that there is not sufficient intent to really call the murder, the tragic killing of more than 7,000 people, a genocide. We are also aware of the International Criminal Court that now will take on cases that were similar, and about the elements of crime that the International Criminal Court has established. And it asks for similar patterns of events to constitute genocide. And the ICTY has rejected these findings from the ICC, because simply by the argument that it said the ICC has constituted itself after Srebrenica took place. And now, more than 25 years later, after Srebrenica, we believe that we can, by our judgment, could we apply these rules from the International Criminal Court to the question of genocide. We think that the International Criminal Court, and that what the International Criminal Court uses as a basis for its work, could also be used for a basis of our work. And so we stand with the International Criminal Court by our decision.
You just didn't answer the first question about this World Jew Congress that said that your report is false.
I can only answer it is not false, it's genuine. The article is false. Thank you.
Davor Stanković, Alternativna televizija Banja Luka. A question for Mr. Greif. Having in mind the mandate of the Commission and the complexity of the theme of research, how do you understand a role of the results of your report in context of facing the past of all sides involved in the conflict in Bosnia, and in the context of opening dialogue and the process of reconciliation?
the chairman is specific. What happened? Why did it happen? What was the horror? The murders? We did not shy away from any of that, and we were not under any pressure to come up with a rosy or an excuse for the government of the Republic of Srpska. All of us on this commission said if there were any kind of pressure, we would not participate. And we did not get pressure. And with that part of the report, there were some very difficult things in there for the government of the Republic of Srpska to accept, but they did. The second part of it is, can we help with this report and with continued operation of this commission, which I hope will go on for a few more years, can we help with reconciliation elsewhere by using what we did as a model to help others? I'm sorry, I was sitting back too far. That we can use what we did as a model to help with help humbly with reconciliation elsewhere. We felt, and the government of the RS felt, this was an opportune time. You know better than I do, the last 30 years or so in this part of the world has been very difficult. And it has been very difficult not only in Bosnia, but for Serbia too. You emerged from Tito, the state of Yugoslavia disappeared. The West intervened poorly, I might add, without understanding what was going on here. So as we looked at this, we thought that Srebrenica had the elements of opportunities to look at other similar cases and hopefully help with reconciling things. I think that the government of the RS, it took 26 years to do this. I think that it would not have been possible to do it much earlier because of just the sensitivity of it and because of the horror of it. We have a tendency to get hung up on the question of genocide. And I don't mean to belittle genocide at all. I'm appalled by it legally, ethically, morally, and so forth. But as my friend Marcus said about genocide, I will just add that we looked at the definition that not only with the International Criminal Court, but we looked at the definition that the Genocide Convention of the UN in Article 2, the way it defined genocide. Let's then set that aside. We nonetheless found enormous human rights and war crimes issues in the region. We see them beyond that. We saw them in Rwanda and Uganda. We have seen them elsewhere through the world. We're hoping that, as I said, this is a model. This will help. I mean, we've got 1,000 pages where we really, 2 years, dug into this from every perspective with a group of people that have not only become worked well together, but have become friends. And, we joke with each other, we eat with each other, we work together, we make fun of each other, and it's all done in good humor, but there were no cultural problems. We worked as a unit and we came up with this. That's more than you asked, but it's where we are and where we hope that this effort will go in the future.
Izvolite.
Evo pitanje za sve članove komisije. Radio televizija Republike Srpske, Draga Grubić. U svjetskoj javnosti je formirana jedna slika o događajima u građanskom ratu i o regionu Srebrenice. Da li ste vi imali određena predubjeđenja prije nego što ste počeli da radite na ovom izvještaju o tim događajima i da li ste ih možda poslije toga promijenili?
Take that or not?
I didn't get the question very well.
Were there any pressure to change? No, I got it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm from the region, so it is supposed that I was informed about the events in Srebrenica because I'm from Serbia, but I have to say that I didn't know practically anything what happened, just scattered information, and that is what I saw among the people that I know in Belgrade also. So I think that people were not being informed about that, what was happened there. And so I didn't change my mind personally because I didn't know anything. But I eventually decided to join that commission in this project because it is one of the reasons I mentioned. I think that a lot of things were not known, particularly in Serbia, and I believe in that it is so in further parts of the world, and that it is useful to have more and more conversation about that topic, that it is good for the issue and that it is good for all the sides involved. That is from my side.
Let me add to what Maria said. I think every member of the commission has to answer that question, the question you asked, for themselves. If there was a prejudice and whether that changed anything. And I hope others will respond. I had no prejudice one way or the other about this. I was involved with this, with Srebrenica for a long time in my government work. I was in Srebrenica in July, late in July, after the event. I changed in my own mind, I changed nothing from what I saw and the information I had been able to gather, and we as an institution at the CIA had been able to gather, which was extensive. So there was no prejudice. There was no mind changing in my view, and I don't know. And as I said, it's a very good question, but I think it's one everyone has to answer for themselves.
Thank you. May I add one thing?
May I answer? I think the question of prejudice is more important. The prejudice the medias worldwide have, yeah, because since 25 years they say that 8,000 or more civilians were killed. Most of them, I talked with a lot of journalists, international journalists the last month. Nearly nobody had ever heard about the 28th Division, Bosniak Division. They didn't know that. Yeah? They just believed that there were civilians who were killed. Yeah? They don't have any information because since 25 years it's the same story, yeah? And it has nothing to do with the reality. Yeah? And that's a prejudice is on the side of the media. Yeah?
Let me add from the different angle. First of all, we are not denying what has happened. I mean, a crime has happened, and we do not mean to trivialize event. And in order to prevent this kind of the crime in the future, before I start to work for this commission, just like as the international community, the humanitarian intervention is to stop monsters and evils. That is what the international community has strived for during the last 2 decades. But after scrutinizing the event, I think that prescription for preventing those casualties in the future is preventing wars and armed conflict. We should not forget about this. That's all.
Thank you very much. I think the whole essence of the work of this commission, in my own opinion, is that we sought to objectively present facts hitherto unknown to the general public. I think we owe it and our conscience a responsibility to come out with the way the events are presented. Our research work in this aims at contributing to better understanding and uncovering the truth about the tragic events in Srebrenica. Thank you very much.
Kolegi, ko traži reč?
Just want to add one thing. When you said about the pictures we had, I think every other commission member has answered that. I mean, for me, the first pictures I had in mind when I thought about Srebrenica were the pictures of men led to their grave and being shot in cold blood. And so there is nothing changed, and I think every member of our commission sees these pictures when he thinks about Srebrenica. Our work was to put these pictures and these murders in connection with the overall situation in Bosnia.
Izvolite.
Davor Stanković, Alternativna televizija, ponovo. A question for Mr. Mayor. As we all know, former High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Valentin Inzko, has imposed the changes on the criminal law, which explicitly says that negation of genocide is therefore punishable by law. What is your opinion on the consequences of such a move in Bosnia?
First of all, I am confounded that any of you would accept this law as valid. I just don't understand how a man who I described in a certain article as a coward, 3 days before he leaves the country and leaves his duties, he arbitrarily declares a law, which then he says must be passed by the parliament of the country without change. You've already had one judge resign from the bench with a very good argument. I've looked at his argument extensively. And he makes the point that the statute that Inzko was relying on does not give him the authority to institute law. And yet, so many people here seem to just say, okay, it's the law. The RS is different. I understand that. I don't understand why the prosecutor's office in Bosnia is accepting this. This was not passed by the parliament of the country. This was imposed, and I think imposed illegally, immorally. and has much more to do with the tradition of this part of the world having been under the domination of other powers for a very long time, up until just recent years. The Ottomans, the Austrians, the Russians. There's an old saying, which I think you have something close to it, that the Balkans are a powder keg, but the fuse is elsewhere. And that's true. So I don't understand why you just don't say, we're not paying attention to this. This is not a law that was passed legitimately, constitutionally, by the parliament of the country and signed by the presidents of the country. The other thing, and this came up in an earlier session, I think that INSCO's law will have a reverse effect. It will drive Bosnia-Herzegovina further apart. And if, with the position that Dodik has taken, if there is a move to depose him from the presidency, it may very well drive him and the parliament to independence. I think it's, I don't know how to be clearer in my own mind that I just don't understand. Nobody denies genocide. But what we do is we look at different definitions. And frankly, the definition, in addition to what Marcos said, the definition comes from the Genocide Convention of the UN, Article 2, which does not talk about, which does not reference in the definition that you have to have, it's in whole or in part. And that's not really defined. Earlier in the statement, yes, it talks about the Genocide Convention being, and the definition being a preclusion to large-scale murder and other things, including the trafficking in children. That's another part of the definition. There's several parts to it. No one's denying this. What we're saying is that what happened in Srebrenica does not carry the scope of the intent of what the definition of genocide is. It was mass murder. It was horrible. And we told the government of the RS there were crimes committed by Serbs. And we did not back away from that. And we don't back away from that. But it is also something where the government of the Republic of Srpska has finally said, we're going to come to terms with the past so that we can have a cleaner, more honest future. I think that's commendable. And I think it also benefits Serbia to see fellow Serbs confront the past. And also Serbia's own participation in aspects of the wars in the 1990s. So I see this as the work as a healthy thing that, as I said earlier, can be used, I hope, as a model. But I'm going from here to the RS. I hope I don't get arrested. But I will say the same thing there. I don't understand why anyone in a position of authority or in a position in the population accepts this and just doesn't say, this doesn't apply to us. It's extra constitutional.
Regarding the people in Republika Srpska, general people, common citizens, it's a really serious or complicated situation.
Right.
The prosecutor's office has formed like a file of, and they are monitoring who says what, basically. The Constitutional Court of BiH has declared itself that it doesn't judge decisions by the High Representative. They look at him as a legislational body in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And yet, how do you see the near future in BiH when we see embassies of United States and United Kingdom strongly support decisions by the High Representative? They support Mr. Schmidt, the new person in the OHR, even though China and Russia do not consider him a legal high representative?
I think that it was, for my own embassy, for the American embassy in Sarajevo, I'm very disappointed. I'm actually disgusted with the decision they made. I do not have good, warm relations with the embassy in Sarajevo, given over many years of things I've said. I'm also disappointed in the British embassy making this statement. It bears witness to what I said before, that foreign elements, foreigners, for up until Tito, well before Tito, but after at least to the end of the First World War, this part of the world was sat upon by virtually all the neighbors. And it created a psychology. And the problem is that many people here, and this has been an enormous frustration. I've been working on this part of the world for about 25 years. And it's an enormous frustration to hear friends, people I respect in the media and in politics, talk about Serbia being, oh, we're too small, we're too weak, we have to listen, we have to obey. Just because the American embassy says so or the British embassy says so, that's nonsense. You don't have to. You say to the American embassy, I mean, it's not happened here yet. I mean, there's a new ambassador, but it's not happened here yet that I'm aware of. But if you look, if you know, for the RS to say to the American embassy, this is an internal matter, mind your own business. You're not here to make judgments about us. You're here to represent the interests of the United States, not to advocate for the imposition of a law that is not constitutional under our law. So, I mean, I think people here have to make that determination that they will do that. Nothing in that. It has nothing to do really with genocide. It has to do with an assault on democracy in Bosnia. That a decision like that, like genocide, that law has to come from your parliament, not from someone from outside.
Kolega, izvolite dalje. Ima li pitanja? Ako nema, da se zahvalimo i vama i članovima Nezavisne međunarodne komisije. Ipak ima pitanje.
Koliko smo čuli, oprostite, Večernje novosti, Milena Marković. Koliko smo čuli, vi ste pre ovog susreta sa nama imali susret sa predstavnicima nevladinih organizacija i drugih institucija ovde u ovom međunarodnom centru, pres centru, pa sam htjela da zamolim malo više akcenata iz tog susreta i razgovora. Hvala vam.
I honestly don't know. I don't think any of us know the names. There's no secret, but there was a lot of speeches made by NGOs. There was some response from the Commission, but I think in terms of time, there was more presentation by the NGOs of issues that they wanted us to hear about. We took it all in. We responded where it was appropriate to respond. I'm sure there's a list of the individuals. There were several. There were a number of them. I don't know who they were. I just took their, and others on this panel can respond to your question. Personally, I just took on board their arguments. They emphasized things such as we're actually talking about here. The INSCO law was discussed, and we said essentially the same thing there that we said here. The ICTY was discussed, and we said essentially the same thing there that we are saying here. Much of it is repetition. And there were some very long statements by some members of the NGO community that gave us pause, and we responded. But it was the same essential topics that you were asking about here. One more? It's okay.
Ako nema više pitanja, hvala vam svima.